The FBI surveillance file was labeled Operation Night Owl. For months, they'd been tracking suspicious activity around Phoenix grocery stores: money laundering, drug distribution, human trafficking. What they didn't know was their best lead was already inside SafeMart, stocking soup cans and watching everything. Welcome to Honor Untold. Before we tell this incredible story of hidden service and quiet vigilance, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe heroes hide in the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button and help us reveal their stories. SafeMart on Camelback Road never slept. The 24-hour grocery store served Phoenix's night owls, hospital workers grabbing dinner at 3 a.m., truckers loading up on energy drinks, insomniacs wandering fluorescent lit aisles when sleep wouldn't come. Dave Thompson had worked the night shift for 8 years, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Tuesday through Saturday. He was 52, average height, graying hair, the kind of guy you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which was exactly how he liked it. Store manager Kevin Walsh barely knew Dave existed. Reliable, quiet, never calls in sick, Kevin would tell people. Perfect night shift guy. Does his job, keeps to himself, no drama. Dave's official duties were simple: stock shelves, receive deliveries, light cleaning, help the occasional late night customer. His unofficial duties were far more complex, though nobody at SafeMart knew that. Every night, Dave would arrive at 10:45 p.m. with his worn backpack and thermos of black coffee. He'd clock in, check the night's delivery schedule, and begin his rounds. But his routes weren't random. He had a system. Aisle 1, canned goods, clear view of the front entrance. Aisle 7, cereal and snacks, perfect sightline to the back storage area. Aisle 12, frozen foods, adjacent to the employee break room where conversations carried. Dave had memorized every angle, every blind spot, every place where someone might conduct business they didn't want seen. To his co-workers, Dave seemed almost robotic. Same routine every night, same quiet efficiency. Maria, the overnight cashier, sometimes tried to make conversation. Dave, you ever think about getting a day job? This schedule's gotta be killing you. I'm a night person, he'd say with a slight smile. Prefer the quiet. What Maria didn't know was that Dave had specifically requested the night shift, not because he preferred quiet, but because that's when the real business happened. Over 8 years, Dave had observed patterns that would have impressed his former colleagues at the bureau. Late night customers who bought single items but spent 20 minutes in specific aisles. Delivery trucks that arrived off schedule with drivers who didn't match company profiles. Cash transactions that didn't quite add up. Dave kept mental notes of everything: license plates, faces, conversation overheard while pretending to organize inventory. He'd developed an almost supernatural ability to appear busy while monitoring everything around him. His backpack contained more than most night shift workers carried: a small digital camera disguised as a phone charger, a voice recorder built into what looked like a regular pen, a notebook written in a code he'd developed during his FBI years. But to everyone at SafeMart, he was just Dave, the guy who made sure the milk was rotated and the floors were clean. 3 blocks away, in an unmarked van parked behind a 24-hour laundromat, FBI agents Sarah Chen and Marcus Rodriguez were getting frustrated. 6 months of surveillance, Sarah muttered, adjusting her headphones. 6 months, and were no closer to understanding this network. They'd been tracking what they called the grocery store ring, a sophisticated operation using Phoenix area supermarkets to launder money and coordinate drug distribution. The criminals were smart, careful, and always seemed to know when law enforcement was getting close. These guys are ghosts, Marcus said, reviewing photographs of suspected participants. They use different stores, different times, different people. It's like they have their own intelligence network. Sarah studied the surveillance photos spread across their improvised command center. SafeMart appeared in dozens of images, always at night, always involving the same group of suspicious individuals. What we need, she said slowly, is someone inside, someone who could observe without being noticed. Good luck with that, Marcus replied. These people are paranoid. Any new employee would be spotted immediately. Neither agent realized that their solution had been stocking shelves 3 blocks away for the past 8 years. The FBI task force had given the case an official designation, Operation Night Owl. The briefing room at the Phoenix field office was covered with maps, photographs, and flowcharts showing suspected connections between various grocery stores and criminal activities. Special agent in charge, Janet Morrison, stood before a dozen agents, pointing to a map of Phoenix marked with red pins. This organization is using retail locations as fronts for multiple criminal enterprises, she explained. Money laundering through fake purchases, drug distribution using delivery networks, and human trafficking coordination through employee scheduling systems. Sarah raised her hand. What's our next move? We've identified the locations, but we can't get close enough to gather actionable intelligence. We need eyes inside, Morrison said. Someone who can observe daily operations without raising suspicion. I'm authorizing an undercover operation. Marcus frowned. These criminals have been operating for years. They'll spot an undercover agent immediately. Morrison nodded grimly. Which is why we need someone who's already invisible, someone who's been there so long they're part of the furniture. The room fell silent as agents considered the implications. Finding such a person would be nearly impossible, unless, of course, one already existed. Dave had been noticing the pattern for months. Every Tuesday and Thursday, around 2 a.m., a specific group of customers would enter SafeMart. They never shopped together, never acknowledged each other openly, but Dave's trained eye caught the subtle signals. The first would enter through the main entrance, buy a single energy drink, and position himself near the pharmacy section with a clear view of both entrances. A lookout. 10 minutes later, a woman in scrubs would arrive, supposedly a hospital worker grabbing snacks. She'd proceed to aisle 9, household items, and spend exactly 7 minutes there. During that time, a delivery truck would arrive at the loading dock. The third customer was always a man in his 30s, wearing work clothes. He'd enter through the loading dock area, claiming to be helping with deliveries. But Dave had checked the delivery schedules. There were no authorized deliveries at that time. What clinched it for Dave was the cash register activity. During these visits, large cash transactions would occur, hundreds of dollars for basic groceries. The amounts never quite reached the federal reporting threshold, but they were consistent and obviously structured. Dave had seen this pattern hundreds of times during his FBI career. These people were laundering money using the grocery store as a front for cleaning drug proceeds. The question was, what should he do about it? For 8 years, Dave Thompson had successfully hidden his identity. Retired FBI Special Agent David Thompson, 25-year veteran of the Bureau's counterterrorism and organized crime units, had become Dave the night shift worker through careful planning and considerable sacrifice. His retirement hadn't been voluntary. A stakeout gone wrong in Detroit had left him with shrapnel in his leg and PTSD that made fieldwork impossible. Rather than accept a desk job, Dave had chosen to disappear into civilian life. But old habits die hard. Even stocking shelves. Dave couldn't stop being an investigator. The patterns he'd observed at SafeMart were too obvious to ignore, too significant to dismiss. In his small apartment 6 miles from the store, Dave kept a detailed case file in a locked cabinet, photographs taken with his hidden camera, audio recordings of suspicious conversations, license plates, and descriptions written in his coded shorthand. He'd been building a case for months, unsure what to do with the information. Contact his former colleagues, turn over his intelligence, and blow his cover, or continue watching and gathering evidence. The decision was made for him on a Tuesday night in November. Dave was restocking soup cans in aisle 3 when he heard voices from the loading dock, more people than usual, and their tone was different, urgent, angry. Moving quietly toward the back of the store, Dave positioned himself behind a display of paper towels where he could observe without being seen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The usual Tuesday night crew was there, but they weren't alone. A teenage girl, couldn't be more than 16, sat zip-tied to a chair in the storage area. She was crying, clearly terrified. "The shipment goes out tomorrow night," one of the men was saying. "Phoenix to Los Angeles, then overseas. She's the last one." Human trafficking. Dave had suspected the grocery store ring was involved in multiple criminal enterprises, but seeing it firsthand triggered every protective instinct he'd developed during his law enforcement career. The girl looked up, and for a moment her eyes met Dave's through the gap in the display. "Help me," her expression said. "Please help me." Dave made his decision. Dave stepped out from behind the display, hands visible, moving slowly. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Store policy requires me to check all deliveries." The 4 men spun around, hands moving toward concealed weapons. They saw a middle-aged grocery store worker in a SafeMart vest, looking confused and harmless. "Get lost, old man," the leader snarled. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," Dave said calmly, "because this is my store, and you're conducting unauthorized business on my shift." Something in his tone made them pause. Dave wasn't acting like a frightened civilian. "Here's what's going to happen," Dave continued, his voice taking on the authority he'd once used to command crime scenes. "You're going to untie that girl. You're going to walk out of here quietly, and you're going to forget this location exists." The leader laughed. "Or what? You'll call security?" Dave smiled coldly. "Number, I'll call the FBI. My former colleagues are very interested in your operation." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What happened next took less than 90 seconds, but it drew on 25 years of FBI training and experience. When the leader reached for his gun, Dave was already moving. The muscle memory was still there. Disarm, control, neutralize. The grocery store worker disappeared, replaced by the federal agent who had taken down terrorists and organized crime figures across 3 decades. By the time the dust settled, 3 men were zip-tied with their own restraints. One was unconscious, and the teenage girl was free and calling 911 on Dave's phone. Phoenix PD and FBI are en route, Dave told the girl gently. You're safe now. She looked at him with amazement. Who are you? Dave considered the question. For 8 years, he'd been nobody. Tonight, he was someone again. I'm Dave Thompson, he said, and I used to work a very different kind of night shift. When the FBI tactical team arrived at SafeMart, they expected to find a crime scene. What they found instead was a perfectly organized arrest situation with suspects secured and evidence preserved. Agent Sarah Chen was the first through the door. She surveyed the scene. 4 suspects restrained, victim safe, and a middle-aged man in a grocery store vest calmly drinking coffee by the customer service counter. Sir, I'm Agent Chen, FBI. Are you injured? Dave looked up with tired eyes. Hello, Sarah. Sarah froze. The voice was familiar, but the face, older, grayer, marked by years she hadn't seen. Dave? Dave Thompson? Her voice was barely a whisper. Been a while, Dave said with a slight smile. The SafeMart break room became an impromptu reunion as more agents arrived and recognized the legendary special agent David Thompson. Questions flew. Where had he been? Why hadn't he contacted the Bureau? How had he ended up working nights at a grocery store? Dave answered them all with characteristic brevity. I needed to disappear for a while. This seemed like a good place to do it. Over the next 6 hours, as crime scene technicians processed evidence and suspects were interrogated, the full scope of Dave's 8-year surveillance operation became clear. His notebooks contained detailed intelligence on a criminal network that stretched across 3 states. Names, dates, financial transactions, trafficking routes, distribution methods, everything the FBI had been trying to gather for months. You've been working this case longer than we have, Sarah said, reviewing Dave's meticulous records. I've been working this case since before it became a case, Dave replied. Patterns emerge when you watch long enough. The teenage girl he'd rescued was named Elena. She was from El Salvador, brought to the United States under false promises of legitimate work. Instead, she'd been forced into domestic servitude and was being prepared for transport to international trafficking rings. She was one of dozens. Dave's intelligence revealed a sophisticated network that used grocery stores, gas stations, and other 24-hour businesses to coordinate human trafficking operations across the Southwest. How did we miss this? Special Agent in Charge Morrison asked. You didn't miss it, Dave said. You just needed someone who could watch from the inside. Someone invisible. The media called it Operation Night Owl's End. The takedown of a major human trafficking ring by a retired FBI agent working undercover as a grocery store employee. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Dave's cover was blown, obviously. Kevin Walsh, the store manager, spent 3 hours being interviewed by federal agents, trying to understand how his quiet night shift worker had turned out to be a retired FBI special agent. He never said anything, Kevin kept repeating. 8 years, and he never said a word about being FBI. That's what made him good at his job, Sarah explained. Both jobs. Dave was offered his old position back, with full honors and a promotion to senior special agent. He declined. I'm not ready to come back, he told Morrison, but I'm not ready to disappear again either. The compromise was a consulting position Unofficial, irregular, but allowing him to use his skills when needed. Dave would continue living quietly in Phoenix, but now he'd have a direct line to the Bureau when patterns emerged that needed investigation. 6 months later, Dave Thompson still worked nights. Not at SafeMart. The store had too much attention after the federal raid, but at various locations around Phoenix where his particular skills might prove useful. The FBI had developed a new program based on Dave's success, placing experienced agents in deep cover positions where they could observe long term criminal patterns. It was called the Night Owl Initiative, and Dave was its unofficial architect. Elena, the girl he'd rescued, was safe in federal protection and cooperating with prosecutors. Her testimony, combined with Dave's intelligence, led to arrests across 3 states and the rescue of dozens of trafficking victims. "You saved my life," she told Dave during one of her interviews. "No," Dave replied. "I just did my job. Same job I've been doing for 30 years, just in a different uniform." The teenage cashier, Maria, still worked at SafeMart's new location. When she learned about Dave's real identity, she was amazed. "All those nights, I thought you were just this quiet guy who liked stocking shelves." "I was," Dave said, "but I was also watching. Sometimes the best way to see everything is to be invisible." Dave's story spread through law enforcement circles, not in the media, but in the quiet conversations between agents who understood the value of his sacrifice. For 8 years, he'd given up his identity, his career recognition, his place in the Bureau, to serve in a different way. He'd chosen to become invisible, to work in the shadows, to protect people who would never know his name or understand what he'd given up for their safety. The human trafficking ring's takedown led to follow up operations across the country. Dave's methods, long term observation, pattern recognition, deep cover integration, became a model for similar investigations. But for Dave, the satisfaction wasn't in the recognition or the success of the operations. It was in the simple knowledge that Elena was safe, that dozens of other victims had been rescued, that a network of predators had been stopped. "Heroes don't always carry badges," Sarah Chen said in her report to headquarters. "Sometimes they carry mops and stock grocery shelves. Sometimes they serve by disappearing completely, becoming so ordinary that evil doesn't see them coming." 1 year after the SafeMart takedown, Dave Thompson received an unexpected visitor at his new consulting office, a small space above a used bookstore, where he analyzed criminal patterns for federal agencies. Elena knocked on his door, now 18, enrolled in community college, studying criminal justice. "I want to be like you," she told him. "I want to help people who can't help themselves." Dave looked at this young woman who had transformed her trauma into purpose, her survival into service. "You already are like me," he said. "You just need to find your own way to be invisible." Elena smiled. "Maybe I'll work at a grocery store too." "Maybe," Dave said. "Or maybe you'll find a different kind of night shift. There are a lot of places where guardian angels are needed." As Elena left, Dave returned to his current case files. Patterns emerging from Seattle, suspicious activity around Portland area truck stops, financial irregularities in Denver retail locations. Somewhere out there, other criminals thought they were operating in the shadows, invisible to law enforcement. They had no idea that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody notices. David Thompson never wanted recognition for his 8 years of invisible service. He didn't seek medals or promotions or media attention. He sought justice, protection for the innocent, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that predators couldn't hide forever. His story teaches us that heroism isn't always visible. Sometimes it happens in fluorescent lit aisles at 3 a.m., performed by someone in a name tag and uniform vest. Sometimes the most important battles are fought by people we pass every day without seeing. For 8 years, Dave Thompson was invisible, not because he was hiding, but because he was hunting. Every night, stocking soup cans and mopping floors, he was serving his country and protecting his community in a way that no badge or title could accomplish. The FBI's Night Owl initiative continues, inspired by Dave's success. Across the country, experienced agents work in deep cover positions, becoming invisible guardians in places where evil thinks it can operate unseen. They are the night shift workers, the maintenance staff, the quiet employees who observe everything and report to no one except the cause of justice. They serve without recognition, protect without acknowledgement, and fight crime in the most powerful way possible by becoming so ordinary that criminals never see them coming. Dave Thompson's honor was never untold. It was simply spoken in a language that evil couldn't understand. The quiet dedication of someone who chose service over recognition, protection over promotion, and justice over personal glory. Have you ever encountered someone whose ordinary job might have hidden extraordinary purpose? Someone who served quietly, watched carefully, and protected others without seeking recognition. Share their story in the comments and tell us what city you're watching from. At Honor Untold, we believe that the most important guardians are often the ones we never notice until the moment we need them most. Subscribe to join our mission of revealing the hidden heroes among us, because sometimes the greatest honor is the honor that remains invisible, protecting us all from the shadows. Until next time, remember, the person stocking shelves next to you might be the most dangerous person in the room, dangerous to those who threaten the innocent, and guardian to those who need protection.